Call it NeoQ censored.
Hello, everybody. So, here we go. Hello, Greg. Thank you, Reemsy, for stopping by. Just going to do a little pilot test little thingy, my Bob here. So, there might be times where we like stop or like I just like get completely confused or it just all goes complete shit. So, try not to ignore that too much. And we're going to like try and do like a professional sort of thing, I guess. So, yeah, we might have to like dip in and out of that and like fix stuff or whatever. So, yeah, hopefully it goes smoothly. So yeah, with that out of the way, we should just get started. So today, I have with me Omnieros. What are we calling you now? What do you go
It's today I'm Tyler Derkowitz,
by?
so yeah. But usually it's just Omni Eris, so
Okay.
or Michael from my
I've
close friends.
totally not got that thing on screen anymore that I needed to find, so that's great. So yeah, Michael, or Mikey, he's basically had a number of YouTube channels over the last like 3 to 4 years, and they're based around exposing or like satirizing scammers, con artists, cult leaders, and conspiracy theories, stuff like that. And he's also written a couple of books, and they're not like necessarily related to that stuff, but they're like what are they, like fiction books, right?
Yeah, usually they're speculative fiction of some sort.
And they're currently available for purchase on Lulu, which is like you've got a storefront there. I'll
Yeah.
stick those links in the description like after the stream ends. So,
Okay.
but yeah, where can like people find you? What like give yourself a little plug here.
Just the channel that I broadcast from most of the time is Magic Kool-Aid, and then I do, since that's a longer podcast, I do clips of that on the Magic Kool-Aid Clips channel. And then my first channel is still up. That's called Omni Eros. So
That's OMNI-EROS.
yeah,
And then
that's my original channel.
there's Magic Kool-Aid, and do you want to spell that out? Because it's got like the K.
Yeah, it's just magic with a K at the end, and then Kool-Aid like the drink. So
Is Kool-Aid hyphenated, or is it? What's going
yes, it is hyphenated, but I don't think you have to hyphenate it to type it in. It'll pop up with or without the hyphen.
on? Okay. Cool. So yeah, today, well, okay, let's talk about. Well, I'll just briefly talk about what I kind of want for this podcast to be overall. So overall, usually, what I want the format to be is sort of. If people know me, I'm sort of a very skeptical person, but I'm fascinated in stuff like conspiracy theories and like religion and cults and all the sort of stuff that Mikey covers. And so usually what I want the program to be is I'll have a guest on, we'll have a couple of sort of regular rotating guests that you guys will get to know. And I'll be the sort of skeptical one, and they'll be there to sort of either counterbalance me or sort of be another sort of opinion. And yeah, we'll go through different things like conspiracies or cults, and these are going to be like sort of an introduction. So if you know about these things, you probably you might want to skip the episode. But if it's something that you've never heard of before and it sort of grabs your attention, or you've sort of heard of it but you don't really know too much about that certain conspiracy, this is the podcast to watch, because it's not going to go into like crazy details. We're not going to be using all the if we cover Scientology, we're not going to be coming straight at you with all the lingo that they use and all the abbreviations and expecting you to understand them. We're going to give you like a little introduction, and from there you'll be able to sort of sum it up to your friends, sort of thing. But the idea for this episode is a bit different. So we've got Michael here, and Michael has been sort of, I don't really know how to explain it. He's been down a long journey, like sort of through a rabbit hole, and he's been sort of out the other side, luckily. And so Michael's got experience with certain conspiracy theories, and well, he's like, even just covering them himself, like the ones that he's not even been a part of, he could like tell you so much about it. Like, definitely go check out his channel if you're interested in the stuff I just mentioned, right? But he's actually, I don't know, do you want to maybe introduce it? I don't want to sort of missay it to people.
Like, introduce just the general thing of what I do?
We're doing today, yeah. The specific reason why I've got you on today.
I think that you just wanted to talk, I don't know, about conspiracies or something.
Right, but there's a special reason, like, the topic that we picked for today, there's a reason why we picked that topic, and it's because you sort of had involvement in it, or I don't want to missay it, so I'll let you say it, sort of.
Well, at some point in my life, I was a major, not a real like major Christian, but I really strongly believed in Christianity. Not to, like I was a right-wing extremist or anything. It was more like a C.S. Lewis kind of Christian. Okay. And when that broke, then I didn't have anything to believe in anymore, and I felt this weird void. And so I became drawn to conspiracy. I would listen to like Coast to Coast and Project Camelot and stuff while I worked at a factory for like 8 to sometimes 10 hours a day, and I would just have this shit going in my head all the time. Right. And so I started believing in really crazy conspiracy theories. And not only did I believe in conspiracy theories, but at some point I kind of placed myself within them, thinking that like the aliens were talking to me and that there were like all kinds of weird things happening all around us. I never 100% would have said I definitely think that this is really happening, but there were times when I was 95% sure. So it just kind of fell into this weird thing where, and you get high from it too. Just from the serotonin from when you're coming to all these crazy realizations and shit and think you're all special. So yeah, I kind of had a problem with that for a while, which has led me to, being more skeptical. Not more skeptical, I outright disdain it at this point. But
so I guess I really want to like take people through a journey with this one. So I guess the first thing that gives a hint to the audience of what we're talking about is when you said the aliens. So
yeah, and the hat.
Yeah, there you go. And so I guess if we just give like a very quick summary, like I guess you were sort of you were interested in, or you believed in, or you were sucked into a sort of rabbit hole of alien conspiracies. And
yeah.
Can you maybe give like a couple of sentences on what you believed? So, for example, I believed that they'd visited us at a certain time, or I believed a certain incident was true. Is there a couple of them that you could just give to the audience, maybe?
Yeah. Well, I kind of believed that aliens explained the Bible. Didn't explain like all of the things that didn't make sense in it, but I thought like maybe aliens came here and they created this because it was the only way for humans at that time period to keep from destroying themselves or something. I don't know. Any number of reasons went through my head to explain why aliens could have created the Bible and also things in past civilizations. But yeah, so I definitely believed that they had been here and heavily involved themselves in human history in the past. I believed that it's possible that they were still here presently interfering, but obviously not openly, because I believed that they had been openly, like, I don't know how to describe it. I think that for a period of time, I thought that aliens were the gods that people used to worship, like Apollo and Zeus and shit.
Like Stargate sort of stuff, yeah.
Yeah, or like, Enki and Enlil and all the Aztec gods and shit.
Yeah. I don't know if you've probably not seen Stargate. Have you seen Stargate?
I saw the movie.
Right. Well, in the TV show, it like really fleshes out the idea that like sort of what you were saying, like the Bible and religions are sort of like our rationalization or our way to write it down and explain it to people what happened. But
Right.
really, they were actually like visited these ancient civilizations by aliens, and maybe like they used like the idea in Stargate is maybe they used these like dress up like uniforms as a way to sort of you know
Right.
give them an idol or something to worship or whatever, or power or whatever the image is. Like a snake, it's something to be fearful of or whatever, right? So yeah, that's an idea in Stargate. So I think people will, if they've seen TV shows on ideas around that in even if they're not aware of this particular conspiracy, they'll understand what you're saying there.
Well, see, I have believed that not that the Bible was the rationalization of humans for alien intervention, but I believed that aliens had created the Bible because they were going to leave and they needed some kind of like something to make sure that if they ever came back, we would still be here. I had some really
Okay.
grandiose theories about everything,
Okay, so
but it
before, yeah,
once.
okay.
Go ahead.
Well, here's the thing. Before we get into that, I really want to start right at the beginning. So, I don't know if you want to start necessarily all the way back at like the religious stuff, or if you maybe want to skip forward to like
I was bit by a dog when I was 2 years old, and it all spiraled out of control from there.
when I was a fetus.
Yeah.
I heard some loud rock music and it set me down a path. So yeah, I don't know if you want to, because you've told me sort of. I asked you earlier what was sort of a big thing or something I should look up that was like I could get an idea of what you were really into, and or a person, like a leader in this sort of field at the time that you were looking like
Hmm.
when you were in it, and you said David Icke. So I don't know if that was like a
Yeah.
starting point, or if there's is there a good starting point where you can you can ease us into this, how you went down this
Yeah.
path, like how did you sort of go from not believing into it into proper believing it.
Well, first I'll say that my family does have on my father's side a history of mental illness. So I
Okay.
think it had honestly started to just hormonally kick in for me around that time as well.
Right.
But
Okay.
also I was in a really fucked up relationship, and I was working in a factory like 8 to 10 hours a day, and I just first I was just listening to political radio, you know, and then like it was Alex Jones, and then it became Project Camelot, which is wish I had full knowledge of all these people. Your favorite CW chanter knows all about Project Camelot.
Okay.
Um,
So
but
is this sort of like a slippery slope of media that you sort of felt
yes,
yourself going down? So would you have sort of listened to the Alex Jones stuff outright, or did you need those steps getting in there, and each way was sort of a step that allowed you to sort of progress down? Do you feel?
see, I can't exactly piece it all together because I had just started smoking weed like shortly before all of this, which probably also contributed, and
Right.
I was heavily smoking like really good marijuana out of like power bongs and shit like
Right.
all the time. So
So
the
there's a
way
lot
that
of
it all
different
happened
things,
is
right?
lost a little bit to me.
Right. So yeah, you're mentioning a lot of different sort of environmental things and maybe
Right.
biological factors and a
Dude,
lot of stuff that's sort of
boredom.
okay.
Boredom's a big contributor to it.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. So maybe if you had some like other, something to sort of focus your time, you wouldn't have necessarily gone down that way.
That
Those
it's
things.
possible, but it's also possible that I don't like to use the word destiny, but maybe
Right.
I'm
Okay.
just maybe that's just the way
Well,
that things worked out for me,
what
and they
I'm
probably couldn't have worked out any other way. You
what I'm
know.
trying to build up, I guess, is like a profile almost of somebody who an average person who would believe in this or could maybe find themselves slipping down. Like you're basically saying it's a slope that you sort of eased into, and
Right.
just because you were sort of predisposed to the right things, maybe or maybe the wrong things at the wrong time. It's not necessarily that you were like, you know, I would say destined for it.
Right.
And so people who are like maybe listening, who are maybe as you keep on talking, say, oh, that sounds a bit like me. If they're not, maybe too far gone, or if they're a bit self-reflective, they might think, maybe is this the path I'm going down, for example, and maybe it's not destiny. Maybe I could, think about the things that Michaels talks about when he's going to talk about what pulled him out of it, and maybe, you know, think about those ideas as well, as opposed to just the ones that they're thinking about at the moment. Sorry, you've been wanting to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think a lot of what leads people into these kinds of beliefs is in, I'm sure it's similar over there, but in America, we have to live in this weird state of cognitive dissonance with the government where the government is fucking straight up lying to you about something. And then, like, they'll declassify documents 30 years later that reveal all the conspiracy theorists, like, about, like, the Gulf of Tonkin incident were fucking right, but
Right.
you don't find out for decades. And so, especially after 9/11, which the government completely mishandled and which caused a lot of rapid deterioration of people's faith in the government,
Right.
people started saying, like, well, the government lied about this. Well, maybe Alex Jones is right. Maybe they lied about this. And then maybe they lied about this. And, like, I don't know. It usually is once you have one big shock where you realize you've been lied to about something that you really, like, trusted, then all of a sudden everything else becomes fair game. It's like dominoes falling down for some, especially if you have the kind of personality like compulsive and irrational and emotional. If you have that kind of personality, it'll catch like wildfire. Right. And they have such a moral superiority about it, and you get high from feeling that superiority too. No problem. Doo 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 doo. I'll entertain the audience. Do 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 do. I don't know what to say. I don't have anything. How's it going, Greg? Hope you're having a good day. Hello, Steliocontis. Are you still there? I don't know. Riveting. Oh,
Okay,
the bot's attacking Greg.
okay. I'm so sorry about that. I had a phone call and it was somebody pocket dialing me. So, but it was like somebody I had to answer. So I'm like, God damn it, I can't ignore it. So, well, I'm so sorry for that, and thank you very much for filling.
The bot the bot attacked Reamsey.
Okay, let's turn the cloud bot off. Oh dear,
Yeah.
it's all going wrong at once. As soon as I like step away for a second, it all starts to go wrong. That's
And I
great.
think he said there's no audio.
Yeah, I had muted myself because of
Oh, I was making
phone
noises,
calls.
but
Okay, Greg, how is it? How is it now? You should be able to hear everything, right? Um, let us know, please. So I kind of lost my chain of thought right in the middle of when I was getting spammed, but with the phone call. Sorry, what were you saying? You were talking about
I don't remember.
Okay, so we were talking about. I wanted to make the point basically like people can get emboldened by the idea that they've sort of found the conspiracy, and it's kind of really easy to do with America because the government is kind of you realize if you're paying any sort of attention, they're not like they're not like I don't know, like what God's supposed to be like, where they can't tell lies and stuff by their nature. Like you find out like it's real life, and they do tell lies and they do keep secrets. And if you
Yeah,
find
and
like,
then
sorry,
go ahead.
well, if you find any of these, like some people will have a reaction where it's sort of like, oh yeah, it's just sort of real normal life. Like they're just like humans. They either make mistakes or they have to do this stuff, or like there's reasons for
Right.
why they do it. But some people will have a different reaction where they'll be emboldened, or how is it you just described it? It was like a sense of empowerment. Did you say, or something like that?
Yeah, and also I think there's a sense of moral superiority.
Moral
And
spirit,
so
right? Like you've discovered
when
something.
right, like when they see somebody do something that, they think is morally reprehensible, like if a rich person like I don't know. I can't actually come up with a good example, but they'll be like, I can't imagine I would ever do that, or anyone who's truly human. Maybe they're reptiles or something, because they
Right.
can't imagine how someone would ever do that unless they were a Satan worshiper or a reptilian or whatever.
Right.
Because, it's how they make themselves look really human.
So how did you? So you started to say, and I interrupted you, that you started to listen to these sort of more conspiracy-like programs, radio shows, media, internet shows.
Right.
Um, is there? Can you sort of, continue that story? How did you,
Yeah.
go from? Sorry, continue that if that's all right.
Well, by the time I started listening to Project Camelot, I was in a state of mind where all bets were off. It was also approaching 2012. I think this was 2011, maybe 2010, late 2010. But Project Camelot is there's this lady named Carrie Cassidy, and she's just this like witch, and she has on anybody who says that they have government disclosure documents. They say they're former contractors, CIA agents, whatever. She puts on any freaking person. She puts on any freaking person who says that they know about aliens. In Over the years, like, they've come out that they're like sex offenders, thieves, scammers. One of them was like a murderer, but she never issues retractions. But at the time, they're saying things like, that's where I got Time Cube from, was Project Camelot. There was this
Okay.
guy named Dan Burish. He said he worked for the government. He's thoroughly discredited now. But he said the Illuminati has a time cube that they look into to see what the outcome of every event will be. And that's how the Illuminati has maintained control for centuries. But
Interesting one. Okay.
I was open to the idea. I was so deep down the rabbit hole at the time.
Okay,
Um,
so let's back up a bit then, because I'm kind of interested in like how you get to that point. So, like, can you maybe did you notice yourself going through any changes in your thinking, or
I was I was
like,
with somebody who was kind of reinforcing it a little bit.
okay, so
So
you had an enabler, so that maybe helped a bit. Okay,
yeah.
so and before, like, do you think maybe they're enabling sort of allowed you to continue down that thing? Like, so maybe you'd come
Yes.
with something a bit more extreme and you'd vocalize it and they would reassure you. Whereas if they weren't there, you would maybe be doubtful in your own head about it.
Well, what he would do is he would react negatively at first, and then he
Okay.
would come around to it later. And after I had already convinced myself it wasn't true, he would start saying, like, "Oh, well, I'm starting to see it your way." And this was like a repeated pattern with this person. But it's like I couldn't
Okay.
escape, because in retrospect, I don't know that he did believe it or if he was just using it to control me. But
Right.
you know, it definitely reinforced things, and it made it hard for me to escape the particularly irrational thoughts.
Hmm. So you're talking about maybe being inside an echo chamber, and this echo chamber
Yeah,
enabling you to these beliefs.
it's an
Um,
echo chamber with one particularly annoying, belligerent person,
okay.
but he
But
was sweet when he won.
I'm again trying to build up this profile for audience members, or maybe for people that like audience members know. You know, this echo chamber could be somebody that they live with, like it
Right,
was yours. It could be a partner. It could be somebody who isolates themselves online or isolates themselves with a real life group. You know, like a cult or something like that, or a religious
right.
group, or a certain
But
community
the
group,
internet
maybe.
fuels a lot of this. I
The
mean, it's
internet.
gotten completely out of control since. I mean, none of this would. I wouldn't have believed any of this shit if I wasn't reading it on the David Icke forums as well.
Okay.
So,
Do you think that you would have been? Do you think you know, maybe like involved in some sort of conspiracy that wasn't online, if the internet wasn't available, or is it like the internet allowed you to become conspiracy minded, allowed you to think that way?
I'm way too shy to like go in public and talk about stuff like this.
Okay.
Um, so I don't think if the internet hadn't been there and I might have had kooky conspiracy theories. But I don't think they would have escalated to the point where I was like considering there might be reptilians and stuff if I wasn't reading it from scores of other people on the internet.
So
And
that to me is so fascinating. The idea that you vocalized the conspiracy theory, and that's what allowed you to continue down the path. To me, that would like I would immediately think, oh, he'd get pushback, and like, how does that make him continue down the path? But if you're vocalizing it in certain areas only, then that's what
right,
allows you to continue down. That's really
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I wouldn't have told my mom that I believed in this stuff.
Okay,
But I'll tell some stranger on the internet, I'll go on a wall of text, some of those posts are still up. So,
interesting.
um,
Okay, so you
but I
eventually.
just want to add,
Sorry,
actually,
yeah,
it's
sure.
weird to look back at those posts and go like, I don't even remember what I was thinking when I wrote it. Like, I don't remember the state of mind I was in. I don't know what led me to that thought. I don't even know what that thought is. Like, it's just weird to look back on it now.
It's almost like it's a completely different person.
Yeah, it's not. I know it's me, but it feels like a different person.
Well, that's the weird, um, that's the weird and beautiful thing about time, isn't it? Like you are
Yeah.
not that person anymore. Because of the experiences that you've had, like in all senses of the term, in sort of like weird spiritual senses, you've moved through the passage of time or whatever. You've become a whatever,
Well,
whatever
also
you
I'm a
might say.
clone,
But even
so
literally in like even in scientific terms, your brain neurochemistry is not the same as it was anymore. Those pathways have been reduced because you haven't had those thoughts, and
right.
or those the logic or whatever has been built up or whatever. The, your brain has changed since then, and so you aren't actually that person anymore. Almost, obviously, it's you in the past. I'm not trying to say, if you'd done a murder back then, you shouldn't still be in prison now because it's a completely different person now, or whatever, right? But you are a really sort of a. It can be weird looking back at you now because your brain is almost totally rewired to be the opposite when it comes to this
Hmm.
one subject, and you can
Right.
see yourself and you're like, how was I saying this opposite thing? Because you're in your perspective now, and you're so used to this perspective now because you've been in it for so long that that's what makes you a different person.
It's really interesting too to look back at them and see, like, if you say something really insane, to see the scores of people just sitting there like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, like parroting it back at you too. It's
Mm,
like that has a powerful effect on people, especially if you're lonely and you've never felt like you could talk to anybody.
right.
If that's how you get that attention, then if that's the only way you've learned how to do it, then you're you're gonna do it, or at least the most effective way. That's how a lot of people like become targeted individuals or whatever.
Right, so you get into a sort of cycle, and I imagine that cycle's quite hard to break. When people confront you with, say, evidence or something that's
Yeah.
logical, there's this cycle that's going on in the background where you sort of, if you believed in that evidence or confronted yourself with that evidence consciously, you could almost maybe go back to that place where you didn't have that. Um, you wouldn't be receiving those feelings you get from those affirmations.
Right. I mean, that is what eventually happened. But it took a not a long time, just a few years, but
Okay.
you do have to confront yourself and realize what you've done to yourself with it, or else you just can't get over it. So people who can't admit that they have a problem with this kind of thinking, then they're just never going to get over it, at least until they realize it's a problem.
So, what was it that led you to the point where your brain was able to tell yourself that you have a problem, where you were able to confront yourself? What was the difference? Was it that you weren't being enabled as much? Was it that you um, got down to a level that was so far different from where you started and you had a perspective where you were able to look back and realize how far you'd come? Was it an incident that happened? What was it for you?
It was a few things. What led up to it were, I was listening to Coast, and they always have these psychics on making all of these predictions, and I listened for over the course of maybe 3 years in total, and all of those failed predictions add up. Especially when you're sitting there like, oh, finally, this day is finally here. I can't wait. Something exciting is finally gonna fucking. I'm sorry,
It's
man.
fine. No, you're good.
I got to rewire that pathway.
It's fine.
Something exciting is finally going to happen, and then when it doesn't, over and over and over again, then you start making up your own predictions, which is what I did. And then I started predicting, like, well, I know that the aliens are coming back. They are going to come and take some of us away. I know it. So just when? And then I would start making predictions and failing them. And eventually I humiliated myself so badly that I randomly involved a stranger for 5 seconds, and I was so humiliated by how it turned out and like what I said that I really had to stop and think about how badly I was embarrassing myself and how much worse it could get.
Okay, so I know this might be hard to talk about, but I really want to try and make this into a learning point. So when you say you were humiliated, I kind of want to. It's almost like when you say humiliated, it's and you realizing it in the moment, or when you know straight after you look back on the conversation, you realized you were being humiliated. There's some people that will be, they will have the same response from somebody, but they won't feel humiliated, or maybe you wouldn't have earlier. You know, maybe a couple of months earlier or something like that. Can you maybe say what was it that made you? What were the thoughts that made you realize I'm being humiliated? Was it their response? Was it a laugh? Was it a laughter they did? Was it something logical they said to you? What was it that made you feel humiliated? Accept it.
It was how weirdly she reacted to the question that I asked.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what it was. And if I say this, then I think I've mentioned it to Greg, but you know, people will look at me in a really bizarre light if I
Well,
mention how off the deep end I was, but
I just
I'm fine
wanted
with that.
I just want you to maybe take a second then to think about it if you actually want to say it. Like
I do.
maybe
I mean, I don't mind.
okay.
I've already admitted I thought maybe there were reptilians, so how much worse could this be?
Okay.
But so on this day, I was convinced that this was the day that the ships, we were all going to see the ships. And so I kept staring at the sky. I was always, by the way, I had a very bad habit of whenever I was driving or outside, I would just stare at the sky all the time, looking
Okay.
for UFOs. And then you'll see something every once in a while if you're always looking for it, and you know, it drives you
That's
crazy.
interesting. That's
But
interesting.
but I thought that the sun looked really weird that day, and I kept staring at the sun. I was looking at the
Right.
sun, like
Right.
waiting for a UFO to come out from behind it or something, which doesn't even make sense. How would it come out from behind the sun? That's doesn't even make
Quite
sense.
far away. Yeah.
Yeah, it
And
doesn't make
yeah,
any
it would
sense at
have to be
all.
big and yeah, with the
But
perspective.
my
Yeah.
my mind was fried, and I was
I
staring
just
at
want
it
to say,
as
actually, that's really interesting because I will often ask people that are believing in something if they are sort of committing these sort of maybe unconscious biases, like you know, looking at the sun constantly, or like if somebody's like looking for UFOs, are you constantly looking in the sky and looking for them? And they'll say no, and you know, somebody who's maybe I'll ask that same person after they've come out of it, were you looking at the sky all the time? And they're like, yeah, I was, yeah. And after time, I was like, you know, whatever X influence had upon me, very tired, very stressed, very whatever, a delusion
I still
or
look at
whatever.
the sky all the time for like UFOs. But
Nothing's changed. No, no.
yeah,
So yeah, you were saying you were looking at the sun and you're expecting something to come out from behind it.
yeah. So I
This was
asked
the
this
day
lady.
sort of thing. There was a sort of a lot
Yeah,
riding on this, I imagine. You were sort of, were you
right.
sort of stressed or
I
excited
like got
or?
my I had edged myself psychologically to this point, and like I was just waiting for the climax. It had to be. For years I had built myself up to this point where the aliens were finally going to appear in the sky, you
Okay.
know, and hopefully take me away.
Was
But
there anything? Was there anything sort of really specific that made you thought this is the
I don't
day?
remember.
Okay. Okay.
I was hallucinating a lot of the thing, not literally hallucinating, but you know,
Imagining or
psychologically. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
So I stopped and asked this lady in the Walgreens parking lot. I said, "Does the sun look weird to you today?" Hold on, my thing just went dark.
Oh,
And
okay.
she said, "What?" And I was
So
like, never
just
mind." And I just quickly walked away and got in the car and drove off. And she just like was so weirded out by the question. And I was just like, you look like such a jackass. Like, what's wrong with you? And that was really what started me fixing myself. I'm not fixed, but you know, I'm a lot better than I was.
sure. So that's really interesting because just so people because you sort of cut out a bit, but I was able to hear what you said, but I don't know if the
Oh,
broadcaster was. You said you asked a lady in a parking lot, does the sun look weird to you today? Is that right?
yeah. Yeah. And she just said,
Okay.
what? And
So
I was just like taken aback. And I said, nothing, never mind. And I quickly left.
So that's interesting because you weren't too far gone that her response. I can imagine people that are too far gone where they would go, "Oh, she's silly, or she isn't woke enough, or she isn't." But
Right.
you weren't at that point.
I didn't look crazy, I
Okay.
usually look presentable in public, so she didn't think a crazy man was approaching her. So she probably was
Okay.
just like, "What? Like, does the sun?" Like, she probably had to stop and think about it because the context that I was a crazy person asking her probably hadn't occurred to her until after I asked her, and it probably took her a second.
That's
So,
interesting. Okay.
but that was very embarrassing for me.
And so as you were asking her, you didn't really realize it was a weird question to sort of
I
ask.
didn't. I thought she
Okay.
was going to say yeah. And then when she said what, I
Right.
was like, "Oh my god, you're delusional. You're losing it. There's nothing going on with the sun, and you've been sitting here staring at it all day, waiting for the aliens to pop up. Like, get a grip." That's what's going on in my head.
That's really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. I can imagine that, like you were saying, it's quite a hard thing to admit or whatever because people can
Yeah,
take it the wrong way. But I think, in this environment, like we're all understanding here, and that's
I've made a bigger ass of myself online
I don't think
already.
that's
So
making an ass of yourself. I think it's just because again, you don't believe that anymore. Like I don't
right,
understand how someone can, like it's literally in your like. I don't understand. I understand how people could make it take out of context, but then like you have to take it out of context to get to that point. So
right.
yeah, whatever. It's like out of context. Um, but no, I think that's like super interesting, especially I don't know if you can think about or suggest or like wonder why, um, like you had that sort of because it sounds like you had a sort of snap, like you snapped out of it almost,
Right. A snap back.
or
I don't
snapped
even know
back,
what the
yeah.
initial snap was, but I definitely snapped back.
So that's
So,
super
and it
interesting
was
how
very
it.
sudden. I mean, it didn't suddenly change, but like the shift in my thinking and the realization that I was wrong about everything, that was very quick.
Okay, would you say you had what do they call those, like a something shift or a
Paradigm shift?
yeah, is that what it is? Like a sort of worldview changing sort of
Right.
thing, like a reality changing shift, realization.
Right.
Is that sort of what you had? Sort of like a moment like that.
Yeah.
That's so
And then I went
interesting
back
then
to the David
because
Icke forum and started arguing with the people there, like I was going to
wow.
convince them. What such was the level of my self-importance.
Wow, no. That I think that's really interesting because if you think about that, maybe you were like, what do you think you were trying to do there? Do you think you were trying to confirm your new disbelief, or were you maybe trying to like get yourself back into it? Like, was there maybe a subconscious yearning for the community, and you were trying to maybe be persuaded by them, or was it the opposite? Were you maybe trying to like sort of cement yourself in this new paradigm shift that you've got yourself into? That reality was actually what it is. There aren't aliens. What do you
I don't
think?
know. There were some people there that were doing the same thing as me, and I kind
Okay.
of like was friendly. Like, actually, there was one of them named Mister Erisian, which is where I kind of got the idea for using Eris.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I initially was just friendly with those people, but then I thought, like, you're wasting like hours out of your week sitting here arguing with these people, and like, that they're insane because you were insane. So why are you gonna? I mean, you're not gonna. I realized fairly quickly that I wasn't gonna win anyone over. Like, it's more of a
Interesting.
choice than a matter of being properly informed. People
Interesting.
choose to believe things like that.
So you don't think at any point, you don't realize now afterwards, at any point that, oh, so if somebody had said this to me, it would have brought me out of it. Like you needed to have that interaction with that lady. Do you think?
Well, see, I do feel like if someone had said something to me that I would have been brought out of it. Like, that's
Okay.
actually the reason I started making YouTube videos in the first place, was because, like, I wish somebody had, you know, looked at me and said, "You're an effing R thing,
You're an idiot for
RT."
believing
Yeah.
this. You're
Yeah.
delusional. Yeah.
If somebody had just looked me in the eye and said, like, "You really," but nobody was doing that. People were
Right.
afraid to
And so
talk
that's
to
what
me about
that
it,
lady provided
avoided
to
it.
you. Is that what
Yeah,
that
that was
lady?
the,
Right. Okay.
yep, I think so.
And
But,
so what? So you so I'm kind of seeing like a confliction there between what you just said there, right? And also like when you say you kind of felt like nobody would listen to you on the forums, like is it maybe because you hadn't understood to say the right thing yet, or nobody on there was sort of saying the right thing? Like
well, no, it's because it's on the internet, and it's just
right. It's the
It's already
forum.
in your brain. This is the David Icke Forum. This is the safe space for people who want to talk about lizard people
Right.
and, cannibal elites. So, like, you could go there, and even if there were people telling you, like, you're insane, like, the moderators believe it too. So
Right.
it's a safe space, and people don't, if you're confronted on there, you don't even consider what people are saying.
So you just scroll past, or it's just literally a scroll or a click away, and you're back in the safe zone. You don't have to
Yeah,
look at it.
or
Right.
one thing people back there would do, and I'm sure they used to do this on forums all the time, is they would do paragraph by paragraph rebuttals that would go on for pages back and forth at each other.
Right.
And even though they were doing rebuttals, like they were just spewing propaganda back and forth at each other. So nobody was really listening to anybody
Nobody was really listening to anybody.
unless it was confirming the beliefs that they already had.
Right. Okay.
Like if someone said, "Oh, my cousin's a reptilian, and I saw him say Dawu the other day" or something, that's
So
a
yeah,
big conspiracy theory. But
something I found recently is I always used to think like I always thought when people were debating they would always engage with the other person. You had to be listening to them to be able to engage and make a proper debate with them. And I found now that you don't necessarily have to do that. You can sort of engage with them. Like I've been on Discord servers where debates have
right,
been happening, and people definitely have scripts that they go down. And so one side will have a script, and it doesn't really matter what the other person says, and it's weird because like they will have sort of this baseline for the script, and they'll build upon it based upon what the person is saying back to them. So they are consciously sort of listening, but
right,
subconsciously all the time the next question, what the next question is going to be, and it'll be slightly adjusted to them, but it's a script. And some people in this Discord server I talked to, they admit to having a script. So it is a script. And they think they're proud of their script that they've made, and it works, whatever.
nothing seems more boring than listening to people debate back and forth with like
With
some
two scripts.
scripted
Yeah,
improvisation.
sure. Even with one script, it becomes boring, but like with two
Right,
scripts, definitely. So if you're saying that's what's happening on the forums, then I can imagine people are coming to any sort of conscious realizations or subconscious realizations or whatever.
right.
Yeah, that's interesting. So,
Yep, and it still stands to this day.
so we're getting to a theme here of echo chambers, allowing it, and sort of reality. So, is there any way that you could maybe reach these people? Does it maybe have to be a family member that sort of sees something like what we're talking about now, or notices, or does it have to be a friend in real life that notices? Um,
I don't I don't really know. It's different for everyone. Some people simply, no matter what, they don't want to hear it. They don't want the truth because it's much safer in their fantasy world. And also some of these people, the only attention, especially, the leaders, the quote unquote leaders of some of these like groups of conspiracy theorists on YouTube, the only validation they've ever gotten their entire life is from this and from spreading these conspiracy theories and
okay,
lies. You'll never, and that's oftentimes it's their income source as well.
right,
So you'll never get through to those people. And then they're, the sentinels they surround themselves with, like their top people or whatever that they sick on their enemies, they're also not going to be convinced because a lot of them are just doing it for the fun of it.
right.
So
That's
there's a
interesting.
lot of element of you know
So
bad
that's
actors and just people just lying because they want to spread chaos and discord, which is funny that I'm saying that, but it's a fact.
So you're talking about hierarchical structures. Can you maybe talk about like the David Icke forum, and does that sort of, or just I guess David Icke and his
Well,
community?
David, see, I've been more focused on the American side, I guess, since I've been doing this.
Okay.
But I mean, David Icke doesn't really do YouTube videos, so I haven't paid much attention to him in a long time. But I know he just got banned from Australia.
Oh,
Um,
okay, interesting.
but yeah, so the moderators on that forum were pretty strict, and the moderators would also spread conspiracy theories. So there was one guy in particular who said he was part of an Illuminati satanic family growing up, and he had seen shape shifting and knew if there were reptilian bloodlines and families and whatnot. And he was
Okay.
a moderator, and he was kind of directing the discourse.
Right.
And then there
Okay.
were a
Like
bunch
a
of other ones
ringleader.
like that. What?
So he would sort of steer the
Right,
course of the conversation in case something sort of went off topic
right.
or interesting. Okay.
And I wonder what the investment in those people have in that is like. Is he really just a crazy guy who believes his family was in the Illuminati, or is he just making it up, or it's you can't tell.
Mm. Sure, yeah. I think the thing I found these days, especially with people that you've dealt with in the past, I'm not going to mention any of them, but people can, if they know you, they'll know who I'm talking about, or if they want to have a look, they can check out your channel for sure. Magic Kool-Aid on YouTube, Magic with a K and Kool-Aid hyphenated. Go check that out. Um, but yeah, I've found that you have to sort of take people who even seem like the obvious pose, or people that seem like they're obviously playing a role, or obviously being, you know, being a parody. You have to sort of take them seriously these days,
Yeah, because
unfortunately.
they force you to.
Yeah. So without adding like any sort of specifics, like you kind of um, I've just sort of found that I have to take these people seriously. So maybe
Right.
they do believe these things, and maybe there is like it's not just a black and white. Like everyone tries to make it like a black and white thing with each issue, but maybe you can be really invested in this thing, but also really enjoy, or really maybe even subconsciously enjoy, or understand the benefits of making money from it. So you could seem like there are obviously people that are just scammers, but some of these people that where it's confusing are like, like what's going on here? Maybe they are just really invested, but they also are just like really good business-minded people, or they have that drive inside them, and so it can kind of seem like a scam, or kind of seem like a bit weird sometimes, like confusing, like they're investing all this time and they're only making like a little bit of money, but they're like really sort of like they're trying to be all like business minded or whatever. They're trying to like do all these weird business ventures and almost kind of like weird scams, but not like, sometimes like David
See, I
Icke,
think.
like,
Sorry.
no, I'm sorry, I'm rambling. You go.
Oh, I was just gonna say. I think that maybe we deviate here because I don't I don't really care if they're just doing it because they're business minded and thought side I do enjoy spreading these things, but I want to make it's
Hmm.
still a scam to me because the only reason they're making that money is because people are giving them that money under the false premise that they're being given correct, like, rational information.
Sure. The only problem I have with that is like it's around the idea of like what we define as a scam, and whether it's like it's kind of like a lie. Is a lie something that's like false information, or is it you knowingly telling something that you know is false? And I think it has to be the latter for me, because people in like say scientific fields now, or like back, take however many years off the current day, go back in time, like we were told things and they were the best information at the time, and now it's incorrect because we've got more accurate or more better ways of doing stuff. And I don't think those people were scamming us, and they would be scammers under that definition, where it's just telling false information. Because I
But
think,
see,
sorry, go on.
oh, sorry.
No,
I,
you
I
continue.
think, though, I think that they become financially motivated to continue to spread the theories, which makes it a scam.
Um, the problem again, I'm being devil's advocate here, and just for the sake of it, but just to test the argument. The problem I have it with it is it's like think about like the scientific people and them telling information, and like maybe they're invested in say like a certain field. So say something like I don't
Yeah, but
know,
scientists do
electroshock
diligence.
therapy. Okay, yeah, okay. But what I'm trying to say is maybe the motive is the same. Like the motive is not to
I don't believe it
like
is.
scam somebody.
I think the motive is to, they think God is rewarding them for spreading this nonsense. And maybe that makes it not, a scam, I guess. I could see what you're saying.
What I'm
I'm,
trying to here's the thing, right? So let's imagine that you're in their shoes, okay? And let's not say like I'm not trying to give you like the worst examples, but let's say that as a really sort of imaginable example. Like let's say you instead of aliens, it's something to do with like religion, and you feel like you've got like an answer to something, right? And the problem with those like stuff is it's like often about people's like safety, or their eternal safety, or their eternal morality and stuff like that. And so you would really want to actually spread that to people, whether it be money incentivized or not. if you actually, were empathetic and you weren't narcissistic or whatever.
Yeah, but
Or even for selfish motivations, you might want the fame of finding something that's sort of the more moral way, it's the more correct way, or whatever. You might be motivated by just the selfish reasons for revealing that to people.
can
I
you think
still
of
think that's
can you
slightly different from actively scamming.
can you think of many of these people who like seem empathetic to you? I
Well,
can't think of a single one. Doesn't come to mind.
that's the
They
problem.
all
It's kind
seem
of
nasty
like,
and vicious and like
okay.
vultures circling.
So here's the problem. It's kind of like business, or um, like the people who rise to the top in, like, say, capitalism, right? They're going to be the nastiest people. But the people who maybe believe in a capitalist system, who go to work every day underneath them, they're still capitalists, but they're not the same as the boss who's like making these vicious, like, economical decisions or environmental decisions, or like human resources decisions that are horrible or whatever. But if you were to attack capitalists, you'd still be attacking all of those workers underneath, right? Because they go into work, they believe in the system, they believe in the stuff that's enabling the boss to actually, at the end of the day, do that shit. They're the sort of work cogs in the chain. And it's almost like, with these people that you're seeing on these YouTube channels that get really big, or that get these funding by these, whoever, to build mega churches or whatever, like, they're the ones that are going to be the big bosses that are making all the disgusting decisions. But there are people, like, sort of lower down the chain, that are going to be believing it. And if you attack those, if you treat everybody like they're a big boss people, when you speak about them, those people are just going to be sort of like talked past, and they're going to feel sort of they're the ones on the slippery slopes almost. They're the ones they're the ones you should be targeting, and they're the ones you could reach, or we could reach. And it's like those people aren't necessarily like, like, they don't have the huge shows or whatever. They're not scamming people, but they might be like trying to tell their friends about it and trying to get their friends sort of indoctrinated into it. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, the cogs in the chain.
What do you mean by like go after them? It seems like that would be like fairly worthless.
But when you say, like, I can't imagine, I see no examples of these sorts of people. Like, I think there are lots of people out there, but they're just not seen because of the way, like, media and the way entertainment and the way the whole system works.
Then what are they raising money for?
Well, they're like the cogs in the chain, aren't they? They're the ones that are like, like the pastors at the mega churches. Look at the audiences, right? Like, all of those audience members are the cogs in the chain that I'm talking about, or all the people that sort of get sucked into, like, these cults, and that they bring their friends in, and they bring their family members in, and they try and tell their family members about it. They're the cogs in the chain, not the cult leaders at the top who are doing the YouTube videos, but the ones who are watching those YouTube videos. And I think it's kind of like we're only talking about these people as if they only exist as those leaders. They're all, and those leaders have different characteristics to the cogs in the chain. And when we label this group of people as the characteristics of the leaders, we're kind of ignoring that bottom cogs in the chain. But they're the ones we want to reach. Like, they're the ones we shouldn't be too harsh on, I guess.
I feel like,
or do you think they have responsibility? Are they just as bad?
They do have responsibility, but they're not as bad. But if they're going online and viciously attacking people because their leader said this is true, then they are just as culpable as their leader. If they go online and go, I do believe aliens are true because Jordan Sather said they're true, then that person's fine. But if they go online and say, like, this celebrity ate this child at this famous Hollywood party, this person said so, and this person agreed with them, then if you're spreading that, then you are, you're guilty of a crime as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you're slandering someone you don't even know without evidence.
I think that's a good distinction, okay? Because I think you were just about to say you're just as bad, and I think you were just a bit hesitant to, and I think that's really good, because I think somebody who, I can imagine, like, you, for example, who's like, say, somebody could be saying like, oh yeah, Michael's just as bad as, like, David Icke. If he's saying these things to these people and he's trying to spread all these rumors around, he's just as bad as David Icke is. Doesn't matter. And I don't think you're just as bad. I think you, like, if you were, like, viciously attacking people on the forums or whatever, let's just say you
I never did that.
I'm not saying, that's what I'm saying. But if you did, let's say you did, right?
I might have randomly been like, those Rothschilds.
But let's pretend you were really really vicious in your views, but it was for the exact same reasons, you know, like the same motivations that you had, the same sort of thinking that you had. And let's say somebody just decided to pick on you one day and it set you off and you just responded, right? Like, I don't think it would be right to say that you're just as bad as someone like David Icke, who I think is a lot more aware of like a scammy sort of, you know, he's sort of more like a what's the guy who set up Scientology? I sort of see him like a that sort of figure, you know, like a snake oil salesman. And I think to say that you two would be the same is sort of kind of like that sort of. I think that's good that you were hesitant to say that with like the other scammers we're talking about, because there is a distinction. Even if it's really vicious, I think there's a difference between someone who is just believes in it and somebody who's like, you know, like the top of the chain sort of scamming.
I philosophically believe if somebody is spreading it, whether they're at the bottom of the chain link or at the top, if they're committing the same crime, then they're guilty of the same punishment. I that just really strongly believe that, and that's just
Interesting.
sorry.
So I guess the difference, I guess the thing that makes me like, or the thing I'm thinking that makes it different for me is like their motive. You know, like the idea that they're aware of it. Like I'm kind of assuming like the guy at the top is sort of aware, right, and he's sort of scamming or whatever, and the guy at the bottom is sort of almost like forced to react. There's like this idea that they're in this sort of environment, they're in this sort of echo chamber. They've had this, like, if you put anybody through the same thing, maybe they would react the same way. Whereas
They're not being forced to sit there on the David Icke forums and agree with him that the monarchs eat babies. Like, nobody's forcing them to be there.
What about
and to
the idea?
this.
So what about the idea that, like, you know how you were sort of fell down a slippery slope into there, and you had an enabler that pushed you down there?
I was never slandering people.
Okay. I know.
You know.
I know.
There is a distinction.
Of course, but what I'm saying is I can imagine people easily who end up slandering people. They didn't have that moment that you had in the parking lot, and they actually came the same way down to that point, and they just went further. Do you not think so?
No, you're like asking me like, well, what if you acted this way? Wouldn't you? It's like, well, I didn't act that way.
Yeah,
and I don't have any respect for people who can't control their own behavior. You know, I can't control my behavior, but I'm not like, you know, you keep acting like there's. I'm sorry, it sounds confrontational, but I just get flustered.
No, it's fine. Take a breath and because I just want you to be aware I'm playing devil's, or not devil, just sort of like positing ideas for the conversation, you know, for entertainment.
I get it.
So,
but you seem to think there's like a big there is a distinction between your basic conspiracy theorist or alien believer or whatever, and then the people who go around and spread the nasty lies about like Sandy Hook and stuff like this. But in this day and age, the overlap is very startling. And even with David Icke, you know, he was still saying that stuff at the time I was following him. I didn't repeat it, and I often would say I don't know if everything he says is true, but you know.
Well, David Icke, just for a bit of up-to-date information, I've spent a bit of time researching him, and recently he's going on about the SJWs, the social justice warriors. He's because what he's done is he's got this whole victim mentality, and he's like, oh, I'm attacked.
What a victim he is.
He's like, I'm attacked for anything that I say, and they say they like to say people are racist, and they like to say people are Nazis, and they like to say that you're crazy, and it's like, well, there's a big difference there, mate. Like,
that's what he. I love. Oh, never mind.
So he's trying to buy into this whole like alt-right crowd, I guess, and get them onto his side, or like alt-right crowd.
He really said they like to say that you're a Nazi. He's been like saying that the Nazis like actually secretly rule the Western world since World War II. So he's been calling people secret Nazis for decades.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember the exact name of the video, but if anybody wants to find it at the moment, you can go just Google, YouTube search David Icke. And it's a recent video, it's got quite a lot of views, and it's David Icke sat down at a table on the right hand side, there's a guy sat to the left, and it's titled something like David Icke and his latest conspiracies, and it's either a month old or a couple of months old, something like that, got either tens to hundreds thousands of views. So you'll be able to find it easily with that description. And he's
nothing sounds more boring than watching a David Icke video.
Within the first 10 minutes, he goes into "I am a persecuted person" mode.
Oh my
uh,
God. I heard the first time David Icke and Alex Jones spoke on the air. I was there for that moment.
together.
Yes.
Oh
And
wow,
Alex Jones had
I need
talked
to
shit
look that
about
up.
David Icke for years. He called him the turd in the punch bowl and everything. But the second
Wow.
David Icke gets on there, they're all buddy buddy, kissing each other's behinds. And Alex Jones goes, I don't really know about these reptilians, but I could kind of see what you're saying from a spiritual standpoint. And then he like,
Gosh.
basically like finding as good a way to agree with him as he
Right.
could without. At this point, he's gone full blown reptilian every once in
He
a
doesn't
while,
want to
but
mess up his like audience,
right, he
basically.
doesn't
He
want to
wants to
confuse
try
them
and
because he
get
said
some
it's
of
not
them.
true.
Well, I'm imagining he's thinking, oh, David Icke's audience, like I can get a few of these guys over if I act a bit like more sane. But
Right,
don't piss him off.
good old Alex Jones.
Wow.
I had an Alex Jones moment too, where I was really into Alex Jones for a long time, and then it
Wow.
was right after Michael Jackson died, and
Okay.
Alex Jones was on the air doing his Michael Jackson impression about but he was doing it like he was possessed with these demons, and he was screaming about like all kinds of heinous things, and I
Yeah.
was just like, he's insane, and I've been listening to this every day. I've been letting this crazy man talk in my head for hours every day. So
That's
I turned it off
interesting.
then.
Again, another sort of snap back to reality moment for you.
Yeah, that was around the same time as I was waiting for the aliens to come out from behind the sun. So
Wow, that's really interesting because a lot of the time when I hear people about their epistemologies changing and like having paradigm shifts, it's not like a paradigm shift. It's like a very slow sort of progression, and they have a nagging thought in the back of the head that sort of constantly they can't stop thinking about it, and it grows into this
mhm.
seed that just sprouts, and then it's like the seed of reality sprouts, and it grows and takes over, and they're back in reality, and they're like, how could I, believe in that? But you're talking about these sort of snap moments, which
Yeah.
is really interesting.
Well, I don't know if it's to my favor or not, but I've always had these moments in life where I will get heavily into something for a while. The conspiracy theory thing lasted a while, but like I was into Christianity for a good year. I had an
Mm,
enabler there as well, but I have these moments where I always just am like, screw this. This is stupid. And
right.
like whatever I liked from it I keep, and then the rest of it I like violently react against, which is probably why I hate conspiracy theories so much.
Right. So I guess you've learned a couple of things from your journey down. It seems like I guess you're more aware now that you have this sort of nature to invest in stuff. So I'm guessing you're more aware when you're doing that, or you try to be, or whatever.
Hmm.
But is there any other lessons that you've, I guess, learned, or stuff that you could advice, or just stuff you really wish people would know about this stuff? And I guess first of all, if you could address it to just the audience in general, but then also really specifically someone who's like, on the edge of teetering down, sort of where you were, something that you could sort of say to them. So, but to the audience in general, any lessons?
um I would say that if you are like, you know whether you're fully in the midst of it or thinking about it or have had, like, this has been going on for generations throughout history. It spreads really prolifically because of the internet, but every single generation there are people who think, oh, I know the truth, I'm more awake than everyone else, the great revelation is about to happen, the aliens are coming, Jesus is coming, disclosure's coming, whatever. It repeats itself, it changes the wallpaper, but the conspiracy theories, it's like a meat grinder. This is a product that's sold to people. You may not even pay for anything, you may just watch the videos, but someone's paying somebody to advertise to you. So this is all about money. And I don't know, just look at the fact that there have been people just like you who thought the same kinds of crap 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It never came true for any of them. And it's not going to come true for you either. So that's all. That's my final analysis, I guess, of,
Final
yeah.
advice, final
Yeah.
tips. Is there anything that you
Always
kind
wear
of
a rubber.
is there anything that you want to add, or anything you want to clarify, or anything that you think, I
I don't
really
know.
wish
Do
I'd
you have any
mentioned that?
questions about anything?
Well, I guess the really, I guess I don't know if I should save this for afterwards or personally, but like the stuff I really want to know is the sort of stuff that's not really useful to an audience. It's like the more gossipy. It's like I want to know the stuff that you were interested in, but I don't know if you can think of any sort of utility in talking about that. I kind of only want to talk about personal stuff if it's actually got utility for learning. I don't want to just talk about personal stuff to talk about it because I find it interesting.
Right.
If you can think of anything that you could anything that we could learn from though, or anything that we could, there's a message.
I will say, drugs did not help.
Okay.
And I was smoking a lot of weed, but I was also doing so like LSD. I think I did mushrooms once, but I did mostly LSD. There was like a point where I was sitting in a field like talking to a star for 2 hours. So I think I thought that was a UFO too. I don't even remember. But yeah, drugs don't help either.
Okay. So I'm hearing like, I guess there's a few themes that we've heard tonight. So echo chambers, enablers, paradigm shifts sort of being enabled, like when you sort of come out of those echo chambers, and yeah.
I did just think of something else that, like, I think might be kind of interesting is...
Take it away.
I think what kind of drove me into, the downward spiral or the snowball to where I thought the aliens were going to come was at some point I thought I had some kind of realization, and I started seeing signs everywhere. And like I would see like, oh, there's the number 4444. Oh, there's 1111. Oh, it's 23. That's a bad number. I would start looking at license plates, looking for messages, looking at billboards, thinking it's like the universe speaking to me.
So pattern seeking.
Yeah, but if you're looking for patterns, literally every time you turn your head, you're going to see hundreds and hundreds of patterns, and a lot of those patterns are just going to reaffirm the other patterns you've seen. Right. And then once you start thinking you're so special, you can see the signs that God is like showing you, and you know about the aliens and all of this, then like, it becomes easier to accept things because you're going to be looking for signs that whatever you want to believe is true rather than signs that it's not,
Right.
You don't even need signs to know that a lot of it's not true. People come to these realizations irrationally, because if you think, is it possible for somebody to shapeshift into a reptilian? That's not even physically possible to shapeshift, but they will look for the signs that it's true, and God will show them that it's true. And I think that's a very common theme, because I think God and spirituality is a very common theme with conspiracy theorists. They all think God is on their side, and they're like the heavenly divine ones with the knowledge.
Interesting.
But yeah, looking for signs is, it's almost as bad as smoking crack.
Right. So these sorts of irrational thought patterns that we know, like they're sort of red flags, aren't they? We know, like, if somebody's sort of looking into signs or sort of, every time maybe talk to your friend and they always read into too much into what you're saying or something like that, and they always go off the handle. Maybe they've got a bit of some sort of mental condition or something like that.
Right.
It's always a sign of something like that. So yeah, if you, I guess, are aware that you notice that you're doing this more, or that you're, what would you say to somebody, like try and maybe speak to obviously a medical professional, maybe talk to somebody that you could trust, talking to about these things.
I don't even know what the proper advice is on that, because I think if you get to the point where you're looking at license plates and billboards for signs, like you're in real deep. I mean, it's going to take a lot. So it could.
But I think what's good is just
medical condition.
Well, here's the thing. I think people like you talking about this stuff will, if it happens to anybody who hears these conversations or hears a conversation like this, they'll have that in their mind as a memory now, and it might come to the surface when they, the first couple of times they look at a number plate, they might hear us talking about this now and think, oh shit, that's that thing that they were talking about.
It's a trap.
If you've not ever heard of anybody else talk about what they went through and the signs of it, then you're just going to look at number plates and you're not going to have that memory surface of, oh, that's a sign. So I think you and other people that have gone through the same sort of thing, I think it's really good that you do, go into those sort of details, because it like even somebody like me, 10 years down the line from now, I could have something happen to my brain and it might send me crazy or something. But
Yeah, Steve,
I could be
somebody got hit by a car that we
right,
know, and they went completely nuts.
right.
I mean, already were, but it got a lot worse.
But it could happen sort of maybe slowly in a slippery slope sort of way, where it's maybe an environmental pressure suddenly changes and I get
Right.
maybe stressed or something else that happens and I'm led down this slippery path, and then I will have these examples now thanks to you that will build that will at least have a chance of surfacing. It's just
As long as they
given
don't
that chance
mark
to
you.
other people basically.
As long as they don't
Yeah.
put the mark of the beast on you, you're all good.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
So I guess just really quickly, I do want to ask the chat: is there any questions for Mikey that they want to ask? Because there's a couple of people in chat, 3 people I see at least. So is there any questions you want? And yeah, sorry, if there's anything else you would like
Yeah,
to say?
just one last thing I want to say is when you talk
As
to
many as you
people,
like.
well, when you talk to people who are in the grip of this, they go, "You don't understand. You don't know what I've." You just, it's like you're assuming a lot, you know. It's not that difficult to completely hallucinate that, if you see a red car or like 4 in a row, that it's like a gang stalker, or that,
Yeah.
that name any conspiracy theory.
Yeah,
People can
stepping on a
convince
crack
themselves of
will
anything.
do X. Even rational, everyday, normal people will have sometimes these thoughts, but they just dismiss them. They'll
Right.
have this like fleeting moment where they entertain it. So even normal
It's an
people have
intrusive
that.
thought. Is that what
Yeah,
it's called?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like you might get it if you've got a bit of OCD. You might like, oh, if I step on this crack, it might be something as simple as I'll have bad luck, or it might be something a bit bit more ominous, and it might be a bit more something like conspiracy related or whatever. But even people that are that minded, there's a difference, and it's like you can go one way or the other. You can sort of just choose to sort of ignore it, or maybe not. It's not choice. You can ignore it, or sometimes you just can't. But yeah, like people can take it too far.
You should hear my intrusive thoughts.
Well, yeah, and again, that sort of goes back to my point of like, is it necessarily is it the cogs in the chain's choice? If they're having these sort of, if isn't somebody who's not having intrusive thoughts way more likely to not believe in something than somebody who is having intrusive thoughts that are sort of convincing them that way? Is it an environmental pressure maybe that's not necessarily visible? That's making
It's
them
probably
big.
satellite beams from outer space, directed by NASA.
Well, that
into
would
people's
be
BTK implants.
that would be a man-made environmental
Occam's
pressure.
razor, man. That's the most simple explanation.
So, do you think? Did you not have an understanding of Occam's razor when you believed in this stuff? Did you?
I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding.
Right. Okay.
No,
I took
I'm having a relapse.
No, but what I'm saying is, at the time, maybe if you didn't have any sort of understanding of Occam's razor or anything like that.
No, I understood it, but I thought it was Illuminati propaganda.
Oh, really? Wait. So
Well, it's
what?
okay. So no, I get Occam's razor, but just because the most simple explanation is most of the time true, doesn't mean it is always true. And that little bit of leverage allows you to apply it to whatever you want to believe.
But wait, hang on. Let me actually have a look at the full on. Because I think doesn't the wording imply? Give me a second.
Rincy says he's having intrusive thoughts about Shawn Mendes. He better be careful, or they'll shut his YouTube channel down. Just like they didn't shut James Charles down. I'll shut up.
Oh, it's interesting. So there is a way that says it exactly your way. So the one that requires, what is it? The one that requires least speculation is usually correct. That's kind of the way you said it, right?
Yeah, that's what it is, isn't it?
And then the way that I sort of know it is, the more assumptions you have to make, the more unlikely it is the explanation. Do you know what I mean?
Oh.
So it's kind of like a it's the same thing, but it's like it's almost like glass half full, glass half empty sort of thing.
You say potato, I say potato.
It's like they're two different things, but they end up resulting in the same thing. Yeah, so sorry, is there any questions in chat then? Or did everybody? I wonder if. Okay, well, let's not go into that one. Uh,
Into what?
Somebody was asking about Cappy.
Oh yeah.
So, is there anything else you would like to add or talk about, or?
I don't think so.
Well, I just want to say then to everybody who's watched, thank you very much. Again, this is just a very quick pilot thing. The idea is slightly different to what it's going to be today, even though this could actually turn into a good thing with ongoing different people as well, maybe. But I would like to be sort of like somebody. Well, I don't know if we. I don't know if you want to answer that. I'd be wary of you answering that for doxing reasons, but somebody says, my question for Omni, where was he raised? That's from William Scott Shrek, so I don't know if you might not want to answer that.
I mean, I think it's in my books. I was raised in Cincinnati, but I moved, so.
Cool. Somebody says, talk about shout out. I don't know what that is, so.
No.
Cool. Oh yeah, so let's give you a big plug actually first of all. So, where can people find more of you? Where can people find you?
Well, when you die and go to hell, I'll have a big showcase presentation. So.
Follow the signs.
Yeah. I don't know, just on my YouTube channel or my Lulu storefront.
Do you know the link for that? Is it like an easy one? Lulu.com/.
Let me see if I can find it real quick. Cool. Shoot.
So Michael does content that I find really interesting. It's long form content, and he does a few different shows, but they're basically sort of like podcasts, and he'll do different segments in them where he talks about different people. They're a lot less, not politically correct, but a lot less child-friendly than this one is aimed to be. So there's a lot more curse words, so definitely don't watch it with your family. But it's super entertaining, super funny. You'll get to understand Michael as a character and as a person, and you'll grow to love him like the rest of his audience does. So definitely go and check Michael out. And he's done some. He's an author, like I mentioned, and like you said, he's done a couple of books. He's a published author, and he's got another book coming out as well soon. So I don't know if you can talk about any of it, or if you want to maybe give people.
How weird.
If you want to give people an idea. Oh, sorry, go on.
My storefront isn't popping up.
Okay. What is your current Twitter handle? Actually, do you want to say what it is?
Yeah, I'd rather not.
Okay, so we don't want to say. So basically, what you can do is, you can go and scroll down and check the link in the description. But if you can't do that for some reason or whatever, go and check Michael's YouTube channel, and he will have an about page, and it's got everything there. So it's got all of his links or any of his recent videos. He's got like a big about section there. So just go to his YouTube channel, click on his latest video. There's loads of different links you can see, lots of different stuff. So if you're interested in his books, go to his video, have a look in the description. There'll be links to his books, and you can just click on one of them, and hopefully the store page will be back up by the time you're listening to this.
I don't know why the hell that's doing that. Oh well, I'll have to figure it out later.
Somebody's requesting that I talk about myself, but you will get to know me over the course of this show, so I don't want to really bring up too much of my past. But yeah, hopefully you guys will get to know me through this show if it continues on, and if people like the idea of it. I'm going to show it to a few of my friends, I think, and see what they think. Give me a bit of feedback, and then we might do a bit more reformatting. Hopefully who I can get on next will determine whether it's like a good thing or not, how well it goes with other people, because I kind of want the format to be good. It might work.
I have the link.
Okay, cool. What's the link? Can you maybe want to post it in chat, or it might not like it actually, so if you want to send it to me.
Cool. For some reason it requires age verification.
Oh really?
I
Okay.
don't know why that is. Yeah, that's weird.
Okay, so bear with me. Copy the link. And let's post that in chat. Where are we? Here we are. Okay, so this is the link. Oops, I might have posted it more than once. My plans and goals. Oh, fans built a page. Apparently, there's a fan page.
Yeah.
Is that something you want to promote? Or
Yeah, the link changes all the time depending on the show, so.
okay, that's interesting. So is it
Hmm.
like fans can sort of like a community or something, or like a wall of past shows, or
I think he just does reaction shows to the shows and talks
oh,
about
that's interesting.
show-related stuff.
That's cool. That's interesting. So you got a little community building up around you. That's pretty cool. So my plans and goals, I think for this are just to sort of interview people that we can learn things from. I kind of just really like. Wait, where's the right screen? Okay. Let me think about what I'm saying. So yeah, just interview people where we can like sort of learn things from, educational content, but not like, boring, dry educational stuff. Stuff that I'm really interested in myself. Stuff that I like wonder about and think on, and because I often think these questions that I've asked tonight, like how does somebody do this, or how does somebody believe this, or whatever, and I don't have that perspective, and so like I don't know, I have this really like sort of nagging drive to sort of like when I have a question like that, it's like it really bugs me that I don't have that perspective. I can't access that, just like I could find it in a book or whatever. Like I can't actually know what it's like and speak to somebody one on one and ask them every single sort of question that pops into my head. Sort of, you can't get that from a book or like a documentary or whatever. But if I'm talking to somebody here, I can ask them these questions that pop into my head, and I can ask them, the things that, something specifically that they say, I can ask them the thing that popped into my head. So I just like the idea of that, stuff that I'm really interested in, those nagging questions, combining it with stuff that we can learn from. I like to be sort of like not a devil's advocate, but sort of like I like to take that sort of position where you're sort of like positing, I guess, just stuff that I would find interesting or things I think audience is interested in. I enjoy podcasting and shows like this, so just thought I'd do one myself. So yeah, that's my plans pretty much summed up. The idea, like I said really quickly in the beginning, for anybody who's tuned in now or who skipped the beginning because we had a bit of technical issues, the idea is basically just to like have on a guest who's knowledgeable in sort of a subject or get them to sort of research a subject with me, and then we will sort of introduce the audience to the subject. So kind of like the role that I was doing today, the other person would adopt as well. So we're both sort of like leading the conversation. We're both like knowledgeable on it. That's the problem with today's one. Michael was the knowledgeable one, so I was sort of asking the questions. But normally we'd both be knowledgeable. We'd both be sort of leading the audience down this sort of narrative that we've looked into and constructed about a certain topic that we think. And after you've sort of listened to the full narrative, you'll have a good understanding of the the conspiracy or the cult or whatever it is, and you can go and tell your friends about it or whatever. You can maybe have a few lessons learnt from it, a few things that'll stick in your mind. Maybe it'll be entertaining. There was a good few jokes in there, something like that. So that's the idea. Then maybe every now and again we'll have a special guest on, like Mikey, and he can tell us about, or they can tell us about something that they experienced themselves. Maybe we'll have a cult on one day, and then like somebody who used to be in that cult will watch that episode and get in touch. So yeah, if you've seen this episode and you're like, man, I used to believe in some of that stuff, and my way was completely different to Mikey. I didn't have a paradigm shift. Somebody had to say this to me, and then this had to click, and then this had to click. Get in touch with me, because I would really like to hear that perspective as well, because I'm sure there's lots of different ways that people get out of this stuff, and the more examples that we have out there for people to listen to and for people to have in their mind, they'll be able to recall it if they ever get sucked into it or whatever, or they'll have the opportunity like I was talking about with Mikey. So yeah, I'd love for people to get in touch with me, leave comments, and yeah, just give us any feedback you like. So if there's anything else you want to say, Mikey?
Nope.
You don't have to. Cool. Yeah, thank you very much for everybody's time. I'm going to put it onto a stream ending, play out with some music, and then yeah, I'll be right back.